Hello, and welcome to the geometry section on reflection. To begin with, we're going to define a reflection. And a reflection is what we call a transformation that flips some figure that you've got over what we call a line of reflection. So just like when we were dealing with translations, we have the reflected figure or the second figure, which is our image. And we have our first image, which is called the pre-image. Now, these two images are what we call congruent, meaning that they have the same shape and the same angles. They're going to be either in a different spot or in this case, they're reflected over some line of axis. So if we look at this real quick, we have our pre-image and it's being reflected over, in this case, like the y-axis or the line equals k. And notice that C is still the same distance away from K, B is still the same distance away from K on either side, just like A is, but it's just like we picked it up and we flipped it over that line. Okay, so these distances here are equal to this distance is equal to this distance, and this distance is equal to that distance. So this by definition is what we are talking about when we talk about a reflection. You can also see in nature that this happens. Water oftentimes acts as a mirror. So here we have a reflection. In this case, if we wanted to, we could draw in a line and we could almost say that this is like a reflection over like the x-axis. So for example 1, what we're going to do is we are going to graph the image of the figure using the transformation that's given. So here we're told that we're going to reflect across the y-axis, the y equals 1 axis, and we are given a point P. Okay, and for this one over here, we're going to reflect across the x equals -4 axis, and we are dealing with a point A down here. Now before I graph the reflection, what I like to do is I like to draw my reflection axis as a dashed line so I can see what I have to reflect over. So here I have a line, and this is the y equals 1 line. Notice I drew it in as a dashed line, so I know that this is what I'm reflecting over. So when I reflect, because I'm reflecting over the y-axis, I'm reflecting a point P that is 2 units above to the point P prime, which is going to be 2 units below. So 1, 2. So this down here would be P prime. Now, if I give these coordinate points, notice that this is a coordinate point -1 and a +3. And my reflection over the y equals 1 line is -1 and -1. So notice when I'm reflecting over the y-axis, my x value stays the same, but my y value is going to change. Likewise, when I reflect across the x-axis, here I'm going to reflect across x equals -4, and I've got the coordinate point, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the coordinate point -5, -3. So when I reflect it across the x equals -4 line, I notice that right here I'm 1 unit away in the horizontal direction, so I'm going to move 1 unit over here. And when I do that, this now becomes A prime to show me that I have an image. And if I look at the coordinate points, I am now at the coordinate point -3, -3. So if you notice, in this case, when I'm reflecting over an x equals something equation, my x values changed, but my y values stayed the same. So that's going to be something that is important to remember, that when you're reflecting over the x, and x equals something, your x values are what are changing, but your y stay the same. Just like when we're over here, if I'm reflecting over a y equals equation, my x values are going to stay the same, but my y values are going to change. So let's take a look at a couple more examples and different shapes. For example 2, we are going to reflect across x equals 3. So I drew those in real quick. I have x equals 3 And here I have y equals 2. And I'm drawing them in as a dashed line just so I can see what I have to reflect over. So for the first one where I'm reflecting over x equals 3, I'm going to start out with a pre-image h. I see that I'm 2 units away from the x-axis, or x equals 3 axis. So that means I have to be 2 units on the other side. So my image now is h prime. J is going to stay right on that line, so that's really j and j prime. And then my I is also 2 units away from the x equals 3 line, so it has to be 2 units away on the other side, and I end up with I prime there. So here, I end up with a reflection that looks something like this. And I'm going to do the same thing for the second part, where I have to reflect over y equals 2. So here I have the coordinate point. I'm going to start with x, and I'm 1, 2, 3 units above the x, which means that x prime has to go 3 units below. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So here is x prime. Next I'm going to go to u. U is 1 unit below the line, which now means that u prime is 1 unit above, and f is 2 units below, which means that it also has to be 2 units above. So now I'm just going to connect my prime points in the correct order, and I end up with something that looks like this. For example 3, we want to graph the reflection across the x-axis. If you want to, you can go ahead and draw in your axis line, but in this case, I have this as my x-axis, so it's kind of already drawn in there. And I am going to reflect each point over the x-axis. So I'm going to start out with L. It's 2 units above, so L is going to fall 2 units below and become L prime. K is going to be 2 units below, so now that has to become 2 units above. So this is K prime. Looks like Z is going to stay right on the line of reflection, and I is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units below, which means that we're going to be 5 units above for I prime. So now I am going to have to connect these in the correct order. So I have L to K, so I can connect these two. Then K went to I. Oops, and these should be straight lines. Then I have I went to Z. And then I have Z went to L. So I have to connect them in the same order that they were before. And this again should be a straight line. So you end up with something that looks kind of like that. For my next example, I'm going to reflect over my y-axis. Remember that this right here is our y-axis. It's the vertical line. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. A prime is going to be 2 units on the other side. So A prime, I stays on the line. P is going to be 1 unit to the right, since it's 1 unit to the left now. And Q is 1, 2, 3 units to the left, so I need to make that 1, 2, 3 units to the right. And this is Q prime. So A and Q get connected. Q and P get connected. P and I, and then A and I also get connected. So we end up with something like this. Now, for example 4, I think these are probably the most difficult things to do. We have to write a rule or tell what this box has been reflected over. So when I look at this first one here, the first one is a little bit easier because anytime I have points that overlap themselves, like they do right here for Z and Z prime, because those points overlap themselves, that tells me that my graph is probably going to be reflected over that point in some way, shape, or form. So I can either have it be a vertical translation where my graph would come in and it'd be reflecting over that, but I can tell right away that that's not going to work because I have nothing over here in this region. So what that tells me then is I'm probably going to be reflecting over the, over the line that goes through right here. And this is my line of y equals a -1. Now to confirm that, I can see that B right here is 1, 2, 3 units above, which means that B prime down here should be 1, 2, 3 units below. So that would be a pretty good guess, and in this case, that is correct. Now, when I come over and I look at the second image over here, I do not have any points that are doubling, okay? But what I can do is when I look at my y and my y prime, I see that these two are 2 units apart. So if I split that 2 units apart in half, then I can see that I have something that probably is going to come in right through here. And I could say that this is x equals, it looks like a -2. And I just want to confirm that that's right. So I'm going to pick another point, and I'm going to look at Q. So my pre-image says that Q is 1, 2, 3 units to the left. And if I look at my image, that means I need to be 3 units to the right. So I have 1, 2, 3, and that does confirm. So I have a reflection over x equals -2. Please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you guys in class.